Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am joined by Joe, the founder of the Better Life Coaching and Hypnotherapy Academy. Joe, how are you today?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, I've been excited to talk to you. We had a really engaging back and forth on Instagram. I love the voice memos. There's just that personal touch, being able to hear each other, isn't there? So,
I
yeah, definitely.
talk, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. Instead of typing away. Right. So yeah, really excited to, and I've been getting into hypnotherapy myself. And so I was very interested to talk to you about it. And you have a specific sort of niche that you found as far as helping those in recovery. And I
Yeah.
really want to get into your personal story as well. But before we do, let's start off with, tell us a little bit more about like the Better Life Coaching and Hypnotherapy Academy, please.
Okay, so I'm initially trained as a mental health nurse over sort of 25 years ago. So I've always worked in mental health and I love that. So I worked with offenders, worked with addiction, worked in acute care, all over. And I don't know if you know anything about nursing. Why would you? But the further up that you go in nursing, the more away from patients you go. And I love working with patients. So I still work in the NHS, so I must stress that that's a very separate role to what I do. It isn't anything to do with what I do now. But I trained as a coach and as a hypnotherapist because there's a big thing at work about coaching, and I wanted to do something where I could have contact with people. And initially sort of did some local adverts in local Facebook groups and things, and just got inundated with clients. And I think I only advertised like twice, and then it comes very quickly from word of mouth, doesn't it? So like lots of referrals from people saying, oh, so-and-so says, I've got to work with you, and that happened. But actually, I've always for quite a long time, had an interest in alcohol. And I'll come back to that in a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And tell you sort of where that came from. So that has ended up being my niche just because I've read and learned so much about alcohol, about professional women, men, and alcohol, and the culture we live in. And I feel so passionate about it. I feel so passionate about it that we give this really poisonous substance to people and then say, sorry, it's you there's something wrong with. You've got the problem. It's nothing to do with the alcohol. And we blame the person, yet we're a society that drinks for everything. So I feel so passionate about helping people. I mean, the term now is grey area drinking, isn't it? It used to be that there was you were either an alcoholic or you weren't. And I think that gives people a bit of confidence, because it's like you're either the alcoholic on the street, homeless, who's lost everything, or you're okay. But what I see in my practice, and actually through my daily life really, is that we work, there is so many high functioning people who aren't necessarily alcoholics, but who have an issue with alcohol, or alcohol isn't serving them anymore. They feel crap, they're not sleeping well, they're not motivated, their relationships are affected. So I'm sorry, do pull me back if I go off on a tangent. I think
No, it's
especially
great.
I feel
It's great.
passionate.
Yeah.
So my niche has ended up being alcohol, because they're the clients that I'm drawn to. They're the clients I can relate to, and they're the people I want to help. And what it's like as a coach and as a hypnotherapist and working with people, you want to make sure you give a really good service. So I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly looking at the latest research, I'm constantly making sure what I do is good quality and is working. And I'm really, really interested in alcohol. I'm always reading quickly and listening to podcasts. And so that, and I'll just go back to where that came from. So I have an autoimmune disorder called Crohn's disease. You might not know much about it, but basically it means that my consultant wanted me to be on medication, but that lowers my immunity. So a bit like chemotherapy. And I was on that for a while. I was on it. And I was like, but I didn't feel particularly well. Not anything awful, not like sick enough to be off work, but I just felt actually like I'd have colds all the time or have a sore throat. And I started to research, I started to look into, there's got to be, in my mind, there's got to be an alternative to putting this medication in my body. So I started to read around and find different ways, and much to my consultant's dismay, who was actually lovely, really lovely, and he'd be like, for goodness sake, Jo, you healthcare professionals are a nightmare to treat, but in a really nice way.
Yeah.
And I said, right, I'm going to take a year off alcohol, and I'm going to run a marathon.
Wow. So
I didn't do either at that point.
Sure.
So don't be too impressed.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. And at the time I was doing lots of training within the NHS. So this was before COVID. So, training doctors, training nurses, lots of different people. And part of the training was about unwise decisions. And I used to use this as an example. So, my consultant thinks I'm making an unwise decision, but actually to me, it's a wise decision. It was about perception. And the amount of people who came to me afterwards and would say, oh my God, I've got a problem. Not, or I blacked out, or I can't remember going to bed on Saturday night. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. All these people who are really high functioning, who get up and come to work in the morning and do a really good, important job. Actually, everybody's the same. Everybody's struggling, and the habit's becoming more and more. So I started to read around professionals and alcohol. I didn't do my year. I think I did 6 months at that point, and I didn't do the marathon. And it was after COVID. So it was in September 2021, I decided to stop drinking again. Again for my Crohn's disease, but also I felt it wasn't serving me. I felt that it affected, so I'd probably drink Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not loads, never go out and black out or anything, but I mean I did when I was younger, so I'm not saying, but at this point a mum, 2 kids, good career. So I'd have a bottle of wine, probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But actually, it was impacting my health. It was impacting my sleep. I was waking up with a rubbish mouth at 4 o'clock in the morning and thinking, I was feeling anxious. I just thought, do you know what? I'm just not sure this is serving me. So I decided to stop drinking. And so that's 18 months ago now.
Nice.
Yeah. And the first year for me was really, really tough because I expected to feel amazing.
Right.
But fortunately and unfortunately, I developed what was long COVID. And so I had sepsis and was in hospital with sepsis and pneumonia. I had 5 chest infections. I was in hospital with another bowel infection and I got pneumonia again. So over that year, I was just pretty sick on and off. The last 6 months, nothing. It's passed. Whatever it was has passed.
Yeah.
But that year, I remember thinking, I shouldn't feel like this. I should feel a bit.
Right? Yeah, I get you. I
was doing this plant-based diet and following all, eating like 9 portions of fruit and veg a day and doing all the stuff that I should do, but I was still sick. But then I kept thinking, well, it sort of helped in a way because I thought, well, I didn't want to drink. I felt unwell, but actually I thought, how is drinking going to help? I think something changes in your mindset when you're just ready to not drink.
Yeah.
So that was that. And that year was tough. It was really tough. But I kept thinking, I'm very much into, you probably, people even my husband is like, Joe, you don't talk to me about this. But like, I very much felt like the universe was,
Yeah.
even if I didn't understand it, I was like, do you know what? This has all happened for a reason, and it's here for a reason, and I'm going to come through the other side. And I've got a really positive attitude anyway, and that really helps me, I think.
Yeah.
So here I am 18 months later and actually feeling pretty amazing now.
That's great.
And that might have lasted much longer had I been drinking. It might have lasted, it might have continued, but actually I'm really well and feel amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. That's congratulations on 18 months. And the first thing that comes up for me, and I know one of my biggest triggers, and I know that some of the people that I've talked to as well, is like when you feel like you're doing everything right and you still feel like crap. And that's what had happened. Like I'd be like, 3 weeks in, I had a very tough time getting past 3 weeks would be my first threshold, right? Where I'm like, that initial week or two where I'm like, I feel so much better. And then by week 3, I'm like, kind of my energy would dip. And I'm like, if I'm going to feel like crap, I may as well like drink, you know what I mean? So I can just imagine, mind you, yours was such an extreme swing, wasn't it? When you're like, man, all those health concerns that you had. Still, though, I can imagine that you'd be like, and meanwhile, you're doing the best that you can do to take care of yourself, the plant-based diet and such. And you're going like, come on, like I'm doing everything right. What am I missing here? So, but like you say, I imagine that positive mental attitude that you have, keeping it in perspective, what's going to be on the other side of this. And, here you are, a good like 6 months of feeling much, much better. So congratulations on that. And thank you for sharing all of that.
That's okay. And there were some days I did struggle at times, because I am normally really positive. And I think the belief that I have, the faith, and it isn't in a God, or it's in something, it's in a source, in a universe, that actually that kept me going. There's a reason. I might not understand the reason, but there is absolutely a reason for this. And just keeping going and keeping on. And but I remember having a couple of weeks where I just felt like I just can't be positive anymore. I just cannot put a smile on my face.
You're human, right? Yes. Yeah, that's tough, and yeah, I'm just curious. So now like 6 months, the last 6 months, so that would be, I guess, like, fall for us. So it'd be like October-ish is when you started coming out of it. And what has it been like since then? Like, so what has life been like these last 6 months? I imagine a lot of like gratitude and such for your health coming out of the other side, right?
Oh, absolutely. I do gratitude stuff.
Yes, I love it.
All the time
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
And give thanks for, do meditation. I think for me, the tools are really, really important. I think for anybody, stopping drinking without putting anything else in place.
Yeah.
In whatever that might be, for some people it's knitting, for some other people, it can be literally anything. It doesn't matter what it is. But for me, it's very much meditation. I meditate every day, every morning, starting my day using a gratitude diary, recognizing and allowing myself to feel as I feel, and just learning to be comfortable and sit with those feelings. But actually recognizing that sometimes it's blooming hard. And that's okay. But I think it is those tools. And I was due to go to a night out on a couple of weeks ago with some friends I'd not seen for a long time. Now, a lot of my friends know, and I'm being very open, and people are really supportive. And these friends would have been if I'd have sat down and spelled it out. But I was like, but they were like, oh no, come on, you need to drink. And I was like, so in the end, I thought, I'm going to make up a reason not to go. And then I thought, do you know what? No, I'm not. So I rang and I said, I'm not coming because I really don't want to drink alcohol. And I think if I come, I might. And I said, I hope you're okay with that. But even if you're not, I'm not coming. Because I knew there were going to be lots of persuasion around, come.
Yeah.
And I felt at risk. So I thought, I'm just not going to go. I'm just not going to put myself in that situation. And I didn't go. And I felt, but I did say, let's arrange something for after Easter where we go out to this sauna place where there's no alcohol, and we're going to do that in the day. And they all were fine with that.
Cool.
Everybody was fine with that. So
I love that. You know, you're giving some really good, like we say, tools, like tools for people in early sobriety. One of the main points that people are getting hung up on, actually, you hit both of them really, that I've had from my experience anyways, has been just sitting with feelings, just getting used to sitting with feelings that we're so used to numbing or pushing
yeah,
aside or avoiding. That was number one. And you're talking about, you know, meditation, journaling, you know, having this like idea of gratitude and putting that in your brain as opposed to things that you don't have. And then also mentioning that the way that you navigated that social situation, you know, it's okay to say no. And then you perfectly, I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for you to have an alternative, be like, okay, I'm not going to come because,
yeah,
just being honest, like I find myself at risk at this point. And I also have an alternative. Let's do something during the daytime and
yeah.
so forth. And you still have that connection with the people, and it's more in your comfort zone. You know, so I think that's brilliant. I think that was a really good way of handling it. And thanks for sharing that as well.
And I think what I say to people, because even now I found that really uncomfortable to do. I was quite anxious about that situation and what to do about it for a couple of days, and thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? Shall I go? Shall I not go? Shall I just say that one of the kids is poorly? And I
Yeah,
thought, no,
yeah,
this isn't how I want to live my life. I want to be open and honest. So it took every ounce of, so, you know, I'm not saying it's easy, and that's
yeah.
okay for things not to be easy.
Right.
And actually, if people need to say the kids are sick to stay safe, then that's absolutely okay, because everybody's at different phases.
Totally.
But it is okay to challenge yourself a little bit, because that's how we grow.
Yes.
Can I just tell you a little bit about my childhood and how it all, a
Yeah.
little bit, I
Yeah.
think, if that's okay.
Please do. Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I was brought up in my parents were lovely, but I was brought up, they owned a hotel. So there was lots of alcohol around, lots and lots of alcohol. Nobody's, you know, not blaming anybody. I'm just conscious if any of my family ever listen to this. Not
Yeah.
conscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't remember. I used to go into the bar at whatever time my dad would be working there, and I'd always be passed a glass of wine, and I don't ever remember not being passed a glass of wine. So I don't remember what age I had my first drink,
Mm.
because I was always given wine. So it was quite a toxic environment in that sense, and also very much eating disordered. So a lot of the waitresses and things used to be like, I'm just up to make myself sick, and I'd be like, yeah, okay. So it was quite probably a little bit of a difficult environment to navigate. My parents were
Yeah.
lovely and not and did the best, but it was just the environment we were in. And then I'm managing feelings and things. So my dad died when I was 17. He developed cancer and very sadly died. And I remember the night we were waiting for the call from my mum was at the hospital, and we were waiting at home. They said we had to come home, and my uncle was looking after us. And I remember him saying, Joe, have some wine. And I remember saying, no, why would I want to do that? My dad's about to die. How is that going to help? But even in that environment, and in those circumstances, we still give alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home from the hospital, and the days later, I always remember having to put a smile on my face. And a guest rang and said, because they wouldn't have known, you know, somebody that was staying at the hotel, I ordered a sandwich at lunchtime and it hasn't arrived. And it was like 2 days after, and I was like, after my dad had died. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll sort that out for you. And I think, so we were never able, just because of the environment, to feel how we felt, if that makes sense, to
Yeah,
manage
it does.
those feelings and emotions. And then I probably went a little bit off the rails and drank lots then in my teenage years, but that actually did calm down. But alcohol is a massive part of my family's life and everybody's life around me. So it's something I think that, you know, especially having children, that I feel so passionate about now. And it's interesting, my 17-year-old daughter said to me the other day, because she'd been out with some friends, and she said, why do people drink, Mum? And I said, what do you mean? And she
Right.
said,
Yeah.
well, One of her friends was sick and one of her friends was crying. She went, I just don't get it. And I said, I know, when you put it like that, I mean,
Yeah.
why? But we
Right.
give it to people and we
Yeah.
introduce it and we
Yeah.
so yes. So sorry, that's me. I've waffled at you.
Yeah. No, it's, it's really interesting, but like, I'm always intrigued by people's origin stories, right? Like, because
Yeah,
let's face it, a lot of what happens in our childhood, whether we even care to admit it or even know that it's like
yeah,
running some programs in the back of our mind, right? And I'm sure that's a lot of, I imagine that's what some of the work that you do with the hypnotherapy, and I'd love to get into that.
yeah,
But it's interesting though, isn't it? It's like you're from early on, it's like, for coping, for just any reason, like whenever you're coming into that, the hotel or whatnot, it's like, here you go. This is it. It's for all seasons, it's for all
yeah.
emotions, it's for all everything. Right. And yeah, I remember the first time, that the line was crossed with me as soon as I started using it as like taking it out of the realm of like celebratory reasons and like, yeah, let's party, into like the darker side of it, like the
Yeah.
like dealing with regret or pain of some kind. That's when it really started, my relationship with alcohol really started turning on me, right? So yeah, and I'm really, I thought it was important that you brought that up, so it was great. It was great to hear. I want to
Yeah.
get into the hypnotherapy part. I'm so intrigued by this. What was the calling? And it's interesting that you combine that with your knowledge from like nursing and the medical profession and your extensive knowledge in that. What drew you to hypnotherapy? When did that come on the menu for you?
So part of throughout my years, I've had therapy on and off. So partly through different trainings I've done through my nurse training. So at different times doing further study, I've studied different therapies. And of course, as part of the training, you always have to have therapy. But then I've had individual therapy. And that last was used hypnotherapy and therapy. And I was so impressed with the hypnotherapy. I was like, wow, this is quite amazing. This is
Yeah.
because I would have never, do you know what? If somebody just said you can tap into your subconscious and make changes or find information that you consciously don't know, or
Mm.
actually change the narrative, I would have never believed it until I was in that situation and I had it. And I was like, at first, I remember the therapist saying to me, would you, should we do some hypnotherapy? I was like, no. So I was like, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Can I just talk to you about it? I was like, well,
Yeah.
you can talk to me about it, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so that's how I got into it. And then I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, I'd really like to do this.
Very cool.
I think in terms of alcohol, I'd like to, I suppose, give a note of caution, because I know, and I'm absolutely not saying people are wrong or like other people's work isn't right at all. I'm not saying that. But when people come to me to say, can you just hypnotize me to not drink? I'm like, no, I absolutely can't. You would be
Mm.
wasting your money.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
because the thing with hypnotherapy is, like, for example, I always struggle to explain it. It makes sense in my mind, but articulating it. So a smoker comes to me and they want to stop smoking. So, their conscious mind, about 20% of the mind, they want to stop smoking, but their subconscious is saying, but when you're bored, you want to smoke. Or, when you have a coffee, you want to smoke. So they're not aligned. The conscious and the subconscious are not aligned. So we
Mm.
work together. I work as a facilitator to align those.
Mm.
In alcohol, people often come and they don't want to stop drinking. So they might say, so they want an easy option. So they'll say, can you hypnotize me to stop drinking? And I'll be like, do you really want to stop drinking? But initially, what a lot of people want is you to wave a magic wand and to be a normal drinker.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And they might not openly say that at first, but that's
Yeah.
generally what people want. They want you to
Yeah.
find a way to help them so that
Mm.
they don't overdrink or black out or drink 7 nights a week.
Right.
But you have to do the coaching and the mindset work first to get them in a place where the goals are really clear and they're really
Yeah.
committed to them before. And I do use hypnotherapy, but I use it at the right time in a combination with coaching, not as a standalone therapy, not with alcohol. I do with other things and it's really successful quite quickly, but not with alcohol. Did I explain that?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. You know, and I've had an experience not for alcohol. It's more just just working on some of the patterns that I've found. I'm like coming up on 4 years sober, so I have these patterns that I still use as like distraction or avoidance, and they're definitely deeply rooted. They've gone back a long way. So I've been using a hypnotherapist to access some of those, right, and do the work on that. So that was like after I've done all this extra work. So I could see where you have that sequence of you do the coaching, the mindset work, and then if it applies to the person, or if the person is, I imagine too, like if there's like some resistance or some skepticism towards hypnotherapy, does that affect the results, or are you going to be less likely to suggest that? Because I mean, for you were skeptical, and look at you now, right? Right? So how does that show up?
Do you know, I've had some really good work with people that were skeptical, and I'm thinking of one lady in particular. It wasn't to do with alcohol, it was to do with sleep, and she was and she came quite grumpy in a sense, but like, I really don't want to be here, but my partner's told me to come.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's just, and we sort of had the conversation about resistance and, are you sure you want to try it? I don't want you to waste your money. And I really, need you to be like, no, I'll try it because I've tried everything else. And then the week after she came back, she said, my partner said, I've got to apologize to you because I was rude last time. I was like, you weren't rude. You were just open and honest and saying this is nonsense. She said, I slept for the first time in about 20 years. She said, I can't believe it. And it seems to work with resist. I don't fully understand that, how
interesting.
People I've worked with, it seems to have done. Sometimes I'll work with the mind and we'll look at if there's resistance and work with that resistance. And I did that with that lady in future sessions. But if somebody comes and says, I just don't for a second believe you're going to be able to hypnotize me, then I wouldn't be able to. I'm not a miracle worker. They've got to be open to it.
Sure.
It's like, as a psychiatric nurse, people say to me, can you read my mind? And it's like, no, I can work with you on what you tell me. I'm not a magician. I can't. You've got to be open to things. But you can work with resistance. And hypnotherapy and alcohol, it can help if you are helping the subconscious get ready for change as well. That's sometimes where I'll use it in the beginning rather than an alcohol. It's like, okay, let's prepare so that we're open to change.
Very cool.
That type of thing.
Very cool. So I'm just, it seems like we're just sort of naturally walking up to your process, as far as like, if somebody's listening to this now, they have an idea, okay, there's a degree of some hybrid of there's the sober or just the mindset coaching that can then lead into the hypnotherapy potentially, depending on what you and the client decide. What is like your usual like a program look for? Like if somebody's listening to this and like wants to reach out, do you do like 3-month packages? Do you like to work with people for 6 months? Is it different for different people, or do you have like a certain timeline that you like to work with people?
So I do offer a package that's 16 weeks. And the reason that that's 16 weeks is because we know that 3 months is a really good time to change a habit. And when somebody changes a habit for 3 months, it's much more likely to stick. But I like to do the motivational enhancement work prior, and really looking at building the mindset so somebody's ready to make the changes that they want. And then afterwards, at the end of the course, that we're thinking about what are the future goals, what do they want to keep happening, where do they want to go from here, looking at developing a relapse prevention plan. We look at, in the beginning, like a crisis management plan, and looking at how we safeguard the progress that the person's made. But that doesn't suit everybody, and that's absolutely fine. And, I do one-to-one sessions in a block of, I think, 5 hours. So it depends on what the person wants. I'm flexible.
Yeah.
With the 16-week course, even though there's a portal, so there's lots of workbooks and things in, but I tend to talk to the person and make it very specific for them. So I don't do like set coaching sessions or set hypnotherapy. So for one person might want 10 coaching sessions and 6 hypnotherapy. Somebody else might want 16 coaching.
Right.
And it depends on what we work on and what comes up. And so it's varied for the person. And I usually send something out. So again, if somebody's got a real interest in crystals, I'd put something together for them on that, which isn't kind of in the program itself, but try and make it work for people. So, because it's their journey and it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
It's unique to everybody. And, it really matters to me that we change the world about alcohol. And that I offer people a really good service. That's where my heart is and what so that's me.
Beautiful. I love it. So I'm on, just to summarize what I'm hearing is like, there's the timeline that seems to work. Like you say, there's like a 16 weeks. So you have your 90 days plus there's some aftercare or however you view it, or that could be the precursor, the motivational side. So there is that buffer zone on either side of the 90 days, which is, and as you mentioned, like the changing habits and having them stick. 90 days seems to be in around the magic number for most folks statistically. Right. And then also within that container, if you will, very customizable depending on the person's, meeting them where they are, right? And what their preference is, whether if they're into hypnotherapy, perhaps somebody's a little more, I just would like the talk therapy or the talk coaching and such, right? So very cool. I love how you have that like the flexibility within some otherwise parameters too, right? So very cool.
And I always say to people in the beginning, I'm just thinking back to a girl, a lady that I was working with who was doing individual sessions and would have carried on and on and on and on, but we weren't making progress. She wasn't ready. And I said, I can signpost you. Let me signpost you to different people.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not taking your money because it's wrong, because we're not getting the progress and you're not in the right space. You need different help at this time.
Right.
And I used to say, and I do say to people, you might not always like what I say, and I won't say it out of, malice but I will be honest with you. If I think genuinely, hand on heart, do you know what you need? Because some people come and they'll be like, I don't want to stop. I want to drink 4 nights a week. And you're like, okay. And for some people, do you know what? That does work. A lot of people struggle with moderation, but for some people it does.
Yeah.
But the people that want to come and do that are often the people that need the year off at least.
Right.
Have the real break. So I will say that. And obviously it's not my choice, but I always try and be open and authentic with people because that just really matters to me. And I always say that to people at the beginning. I know you're paying for this service, but I'm just not going to always tell you what you want to hear because of that, because that isn't right. That's my duty to you, is to give you the best service I can.
Right.
Yeah,
I love that. That's a good policy to have. And, I think at the end of the day, even though it might feel like you're bopping somebody on the nose when you say that, I think people will be long-term will be much gladder that they have that relationship with you, that you can show them, where inside themselves they need to change and such. Right. I think that's where the really deep and fearless, effective coaching occurs. Right.
And it gives people the chance to opt out. If somebody's only coming because the partner's told them they need to come, but they don't want to make the changes, then actually it gives them a chance to opt out and go to somebody else that maybe won't challenge them. It's, and that's fine. That's fine. Not everybody is at the place that they want to make changes. The people do come for all sorts of different reasons.
For sure.
And sometimes it is to please a husband, a wife, or whoever it may be. And that's fine, but that isn't necessarily going to create lasting change. It's not an environment to create change. So
or very short term, to satiate your partner, right? Like, to get them off my back, I'll change, quote unquote, for a couple of weeks, and then
exactly,
right, and then you go back to Well, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and thank you for providing some information about your business. Sounds like just with a wonderful story, the passion really comes across. The know-how, your backstory as far as the work that you've done in the medical profession, as well as what you're doing with your private coaching business now, is great stuff. I really enjoyed talking with you. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you, where can you be found online, and if you have anything. I know that you're talking about before, you have a freebie that you'd like to offer people. So I'd love to give you that opportunity now.
Thank you. So the best place to find me at the moment is on Instagram as Joe Coaching Hypnotherapy. And you can click my link in there in the bio on Instagram, and you can download for free a free guide to ditch the wine o'clock habit. And that's just full of information and 10 different actions that you could take to help you start breaking the habit of nightly wine o'clock. Yes, so I'm quite, as I was saying to you before, I'm quite new to all the social media side. I'm better at the doing of the job than promoting myself. So I hope I've said that right for my Instagram.
It'll be in the show notes. There's a couple underscores in there, so it's Joe Coaching Hypnotherapy with underscores in between each word. I'll put that in the show notes for everybody. And you're absolutely right. In your link there, it will go right to, it says download my freebie, which is the Ditch the Wine O'Clock Habit Guide that you mentioned, as well as an opportunity to book a call with you. And there's also a link to your website. So everything that they could need is basically based off of your Instagram profile. So give you a follow. I really like the stuff you put in there. You have a lot of great information about yourself and the path that took you to where you are right now. That definitely stood out to me as soon as I, read all of that. I'm like, I have to connect with this person. It seemed very interesting. And I just, I've really enjoyed our conversation. So Joe, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. And this is my first podcast. So thank you so much for putting me in and making it enjoyable. Thank you.
Absolutely. I've said it before and I'll say it on air here. Honored that your first podcast is with me. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for asking me. Thank you. Okay.